I own and I use all of these drones for work, and I do this for money, so let me just save you the time. First of all, the proof is in the pudding, and I'm going to show you all my footage, and this is for the most part as far as I've been able to take each of these drones. Take a look at it, and if any of this looks similar to stuff that you want to film, you know that these drones have at least this potential in them. So if you can take them farther, great, but you know they can do at least this. Most of the footage is shot on normal profile and color graded a little bit in Adobe Premiere Pro. The Mavic 3 Pro and the Mavic 3 Classic both have that 5.1K sensor on the wide camera, so bottom line, the important one is the wide one, and they can both get you that quality. Then the Mavic 3 Pro has two telephoto lenses on it as well, a 3x and a 7x. I do also have an Inspire 2, and I have an X5S camera for it. This is not the newest model though, the Inspire 3 just came out a little bit ago. For a camera guy or photographer who is not new to drones, skip ahead. If you are completely new to drones, I'm going to fill you in on the capabilities. You don't really have to worry about a drone missing some crucial feature you absolutely need. Once you're paying over a certain price point, $750, you're basically getting everything you need. All of these drones I'm dealing with are smarter drones. They connect to satellites so they know where they are, GPS, then an app on your phone. They can fly 5 miles away, you'll still have a connection. When you turn them on, they just hover. They have sensors to not crash into things. They warn you if anything is wrong, the battery's low. They won't take off if it's somewhere super illegal like an airport. They'll record the location at takeoff and fly back to you before the battery runs out automatically, or if there's an issue like the phone or the controller died, they will remember where they were and then just fly home after like a minute without getting a signal from you. And if you're flying somewhere super illegal, it's not even going to let you take off when you turn it on and connect the app. Just to clarify what this is about, if I measured every single unnecessary spec about all of these drones, we'd be here for 50 million years. I'm here to save you a ton of time and get to the point. If you want to talk about like color science and like artifacting and whatnot, then watch somebody else's review. All of these drones I have sitting here are good enough to sell the footage. You can make money with these drones. I've sold Mini 3 footage before for $600 because it was relevant to a local event and that was the only place they could find this footage. Drone technology is insane now, and these massive leaps and bounds have come in the past couple of years, but the company that made all of this mainstream is DJI. DJI is market dominant. They have the best quality, they have the fastest updates, newest firmware when there is a new feature. If a new, more capable camera or feature is coming out, it's going to come from them. There's really not competition. When somebody else makes a drone that can do as much for the price, I will put them up here. Autel has some good drones, not all of them. The Evo 2 Pro had a really great picture, kind of flew clunky though, so I wouldn't suggest something like that when for less money you can get an alternative that just works and flies better. You also only find smart remotes with DJI. DJI's strongest suit is their gimbals. It doesn't matter which of these you're flying, if it's an Inspire 2 or a Mini 3, if you're at the beach and it's windy, they will all come out with stable footage. You might see the Mini 3 wobble in the wind, and that's scary to you watching the drone shake in front of you, but the footage in the end isn't going to be a problem. All of these gimbals can hold still for a full second long exposure at nighttime. That still really blows my mind that you can get this stuff. That's never going to get old to me. So bells and whistles will vary between each of these drones, but only by a small amount. The most important thing, and the reason you pay more for an upgrade, is the camera, the sensor on the drone. A bigger sensor on a bigger camera needs a larger battery to support it and a bigger body to hold it still. The Mavic 3 is a micro four thirds sensor, and that is the biggest that you can basically get right now. The Air 3 has two 3/4 inch sensors on it, which for some reason outperformed the Air 2S, which was the model previous to this, even though that had a 1-inch sensor. These are doing a better job in low light and just the color in general. That was a super popular drone. I'm addressing it because I don't want you to see that a friend has it and you didn't hear about it from me and you don't know what the heck it is. So just so you know. Then there is the Mini 3 Pro, and this uses a 3/4 inch sensor too. It's up here because the convenience is so good that yes, it makes it a realistically applicable drone. It's like the GoPro of drones. It's small and convenient, and you'll just wind up using it a ton even on professional stuff. And it still isn't as good as the Air 3s, which is newer and has better firmware in it, but you can get good stuff with this. You just have to be aware of the extremes to avoid like sunsets. Long story short, the richest, most beautiful, cinematic, crap your pants image you're going to find on a drone right now is the Mavic 3. Which Mavic 3 should you get? The answer is yes. The Mavic 3 Pro, the newest version of this, has 3 cameras on it. A micro four thirds sensor, a 3/4 inch sensor, and then a 1/2 inch sensor on the long telephoto. So you've got the wide view, the 3x telephoto, and the 7x telephoto. Those are fun to have. We'll get into it in a minute. I don't really care which one of these you get. As long as it has the 5.1K sensor, you are getting a camera that you can throw this into anything. If you find a nice sunset with feathery, fluffy clouds, it will look better in the end than what you were standing there looking at. Incredible to see a drone do that. Everything I've thrown this thing into, it doesn't matter the situation, it's just come out phenomenal. It's also going to get you the closest to a final product without you having to color grade a lot. With the smaller drones, I do have to play with the picture a little bit in the editor, a little bit more with the Mini 3 Pro because the dynamic range isn't as strong as the bigger ones. But the Mavic 3, sometimes I don't even want to change anything with the color in the footage because the 5.1K normal profile is so strong. All Mavic 3s have that 5.1K micro four thirds Hasselblad camera. It doesn't matter which one of them you get, they will all get you the same quality picture. For these telephoto lenses, they're fun. The 3X is useful because obviously you can stack things into one image. You have a different field of view, you can fit in things in the background like a mountain, and it's very dramatic that way. The 7X is really good, I've found, for sunsets. When you have hazy sunsets, mountains cascading behind each other, a long lens, 188mm equivalent, is very handy to show that off. You just could never do that with a wide lens. But they are not to die for the way the wide camera is. So if in whatever you do, you need those things, obviously it could be applicable if you're doing events. That's super helpful. You can zoom in on a bride and groom, and it doesn't matter if it's the world's most artistic shot, you can just get close up, which is awesome to be able to do. However, it's not even that they're bad cameras, it's just that the 5.1K is so good, you're always going to compare it to that, and it's going to hurt when you go put them side by side. You get better framing with the long lenses, but man, it's just really knocks it out the park every time on the wide lens. Actually, while making this video, they have a firmware update for the Mavic 3 where you now have parking cameras on all sides. There's a black and white preview to your front, back, left, right, and you can see it by swiping at the bottom left on the little map compass thing. This is a really big deal when you're using those telephoto lenses because you always think you're going to hit something in front of you even though you're really far away. You can see how it looks like I'm going to hit the wall, but I have tons of room. Unbelievably grateful they added this. That is such a huge help. There is one other variable to consider, and it's the CINE version of the Mavic 3. It's more expensive, it's got a 1TB built-in hard drive, and it shoots in ProRes as an option. You can get a 256GB SD card for like 30 bucks or something, I don't know. It's not hard to come across memory. It's just that when you're writing ProRes files with that much data, and the files are that big, you need a fast internal hard drive to be able to write that to. Really, it's ProRes licensing and the ability to shoot in ProRes in general. Good news, ProRes adds a teeny boost in quality, but in the end, it's not really noticeable very much. You probably know that ProRes files are way bigger because they're way less compressed, so your computer doesn't have to work as hard when you're scrubbing and editing to uncompress all that and like translate it to look at the footage. By the way, you don't have to worry about size that much anymore because they added some options for ProRes now, so you can shoot in a lighter version of it that doesn't use as much data. To your computer, H.265 is like using a suitcase with all your clothes in it. It's annoying every time you have to dig in there. You can do it, but the computer has to work harder to sort through. Versus ProRes, it's like having your closet. It takes up a lot more space, but as soon as you need your one lucky sock, you can find it right away. You won't notice on small projects, but on the really big ones, I mean, I've had to edit network stuff and commercials and unimportant movies, and yeah, after an hour-long timeline, you will notice the difference. Not the end of the world though, and if your bottom line is absolutely just the quality, any Mavic 3 will get you that, so you know, you can sleep easy at night. Both the Mavic 3 Classic and the Mavic 3 Pro will shoot in 10-bit Dlog. Normal profile is 8-bit unless you have the CINE version. So the other benefit of the CINE version is that it's 10-bit all the time. Again, little boost in quality, not the end of the world though. Mini 3 Pro is an honorable mention because you can get really good stuff with this drone, but you have to be aware of the limits of its sensor. Sunset will look good, but not the best. Midday will look good, but not the best. Any camera can handle midday. You won't really see the difference. However, the Mavic 3 is the exception because it's just more dramatic here. The shadows are richer. This is a much more appealing shot on the Mavic 3. This is no surprise, but you can see this clearer in a side-by-side. Don't look at the focus because assume that I was shooting blurry on the Mini 3 Pro. Shadows and the color are just richer on the Mavic 3. And of course, the Air 3 is the halfway point between the Mini 3 Pro and the Mavic 3 quality-wise. I'll just tell you now, the Air 3 with really no contest beats the Mini 3 Pro. The color is better, the low light is much better, and you have night mode on the Air 3, which is really important if you're forced to shoot very late. It's a little bit smaller than the Mavic 3, but I would still consider it a larger drone. On top of beating the Mini 3 Pro's camera, it has a second camera that can do the same. Both of those cameras can get 10-bit Dlog if you care a ton about that. And for the telephoto, remember the 3X is really the only telephoto you need. The pricing makes it a halfway point, but quality-wise, I'd say it's a little bit more than a halfway point. If you told me you had one, I would say, cool, I wouldn't scoff and be like, oh, why didn't you get a Mavic 3? But again, bottom line, the Mavic 3 quality-wise, it does win. If you can't afford a Mavic 3 Pro and you need that 3x lens for events, work stuff, or just unique framing, then the Air 3 is your drone. Both the Air 3 cameras are 4K though. 5.1K is on the Mavic 3s. The Mavic 3 Pro's cameras are 4K for the telephoto lenses and then 5.1K for the wide lens. I don't fuss too much about resolution though, the end product matters a lot more to me. So I would take 4K off of a better sensor with better firmware than 6K off of an older model. For photography, you don't really have to worry that hard about which one of these drones you pick because photography is infinitely less stressful than video with drones, and you have a way higher ceiling as far as skill versus your equipment. So once you learn the tricks, you're not going to be obsessed with specs so long as it can shoot long exposures, panoramic photos, raw format. You have tons to work with. I do need you to know something though that drives me nuts. The Mini 3 Pro and the Air 3 are listed as 48 megapixel sensors when you're buying these things. It is a 12 megapixel sensor. The image is 12 megapixels. I mean, that's really just my bottom line. Cell phone companies do this a lot. They use something called quad Bayer. It sounds great in marketing. It splits all the pixels into 4 mini pixels. The sensor is small enough that it doesn't really matter. You can't really discriminate between the two photos, bottom line. I mean, otherwise it would look like this. You're talking about 48 megapixels versus 12. There is a 2% sharper difference on the bigger photo, but it's also like 4 times the file size. It's like 36 megabytes. This is like fat-free ice cream, but it's just loaded with sugar. And no matter how many times you bring this up to Hassan, he doesn't understand that calories are the bottom line, and he thinks that you're unhealthy for liking Cold Stone instead of frozen yogurt. I'm sick of having this conversation. In the end, though, 12 megapixels has been fine to me. I mean, it's still 4,000 by 3,000, you've got tons to work with. You can shoot panoramic photos if you need more megapixels. I've been getting 80 megapixel panoramics off of a Mini 2 for a long time. In their defense though, the quad Bayer sensor is very good for video because you get better exposure balancing that way and better low light. That's why the Air 3 feels like such a leap in technology even though the sensor is smaller. The Mavic 3s have 20 megapixel cameras and I think that's as high as the quality goes. That's like 5400 by 3600 or something. That is great to have, but again, the megapixels are kind of a moot point if you're using Adobe Lightroom. So if you're brand new to photography and you haven't even unlocked your full potential yet, don't feel bad if you're not getting 20 megapixels. Midday footage, all drones can pretty much deal with fine. If you're dependent on low light footage, this is going to put a huge curve on your decision. The Mini 3 Pro technically had the biggest advantage here because I filmed with it first. These are straight from camera, no adjusting. I'm not using Dlog either because ironically it looks better shooting normal in low light. Then the Mavic 3 just destroys the other two here. I'm just kidding, they all suck. But there is a big advantage with the Mavic 3 and the Air 3. They both have night mode, and bottom line, this is the best you're going to get low light footage here with the Mavic 3. It's in 4K and I just put it on auto. I can't believe I'm doing that, but the noise cleaning in the software is very good. The Air 3 has it for the wide lens and it also has night mode for the 7x lens, but that lens is a little bit darker. So the biggest difference isn't just the hardware in here, it's also having night mode. The Mini 3 Pro doing the best he can, but he's just too wait, he can't keep up with these. Remember, these are all small sensors. They're not made for this stuff, but this is very, very low light. It's not sunset, which most of them can handle well. If you refuse auto settings, you should still use night mode because it changes the black point. Even at a shutter of 50 on night mode, the Mavic 3 does a much better job than shooting without. Then from here, I can make a little bit of changes in Adobe Premiere to help with the image. I don't care what drone you get, just make sure you get the package with the smart controller. It seems really dumb to me to not use this when they're so cheap now and I've had it both ways. I've never heard of somebody regretting getting one of these things. Size, does that matter? Yes. Only because the Mini 3 Pro is so convenient that it forces itself in there and makes that a metric to weigh the value of the drone by. So you're flying your drone, you take it to Iceland to shoot a volcano event to get this one-of-a-kind unique footage just like everybody else. Do you want to send an Inspire 2 over hot lava? No. The Mini 3 Pro is a much less stressful risk. It falls out of the sky and it cannot kill a small child or animal. The Pond 5 sales alone might even pay for that footage once you have your raptor friend fish it out of the volcano. If I'm hiking a mountain, the Mavic 3 is annoying. The Air 2S is just big enough to get annoying after a while, but the Mini 3, I could put it in my pocket or a backpack and I would forget I even have it on me. It can turn its head sideways and no other DJI can do that. So you get full 4K footage sideways, there's no quality loss. Social media posts though, I usually just crop in on the wide footage. It's a fun feature, that's basically it though. It's not make or break, but it's nice that it's there. It can also fit inside your house though. There's a lot of real estate people in here that are quickly learning drones because they need to get photos of properties for less money. Marketing assistants who have to figure this out really quickly, and this is a lot less stressful. There's tons of room in a hallway. With the Mavic 3, you are really cutting it close. You have collision sensors, but sometimes things go wrong. I mean, it won't pick up a wire or a fishing line that's just hanging there. The Mini 3 is also the quietest, and they are all whiny and loud, just so you know, but this one is the least noticeable. A Mavic 3 would be noticeable by neighbors in the morning or in the evening when things are a little bit quieter. If they hear it though, it's easily mistakable for a weed whacker, which could be flying by. In the middle of the day, you could probably get by without any looks though, so it's not like something people notice unless they're outside. So I mentioned before, almost all the footage you see is shot in normal profile. I shoot in normal 95% of the time. Nowadays, it gets you 95% of the way there, and if you do need to color grade, you still can. Dlog, I can't justify doing all the work for anymore. This is Dlog M here, but similar. Also, a great example of the Mavic 3's exposure balancing at work, and this is like one of the only times I like when the software is interfering. Fun fact, hyperlapses are my stock footage that sells the best. Yours won't look like this though. I do mine a special way using Adobe Lightroom to blend two exposures together in Adobe Premiere. All the drones I've shown you will do hyperlapse, but they look like this. You'll get much better results using the raw photos than what the app gives you. You can also do a hyperlapse with the telephoto lens if your drone has one. I'm about to talk about the Inspires and the Inspire 2. If you don't care, skip ahead. I really insist on trying a drone first before making a suggestion. I wish I could try an Inspire 3 first so I would know the difference. The Inspire 3 has a full frame sensor. That's a huge leap from Micro Four Thirds. Talk about low light footage. The camera is 8K instead of 6K. Obviously, you've got to pay extra for raw licensing. It's only a miserly $17,000 versus getting a used X5S on an Inspire 2 for like $5,000. You can't look at this drone the same way you look at the other drones. It doesn't assemble as easy, it doesn't record the same, it takes up this much room in the car, it's really big and heavy, you can film network stuff for it. Its biggest, most obvious advantages are multiple lenses, and up until recently, this was the only way you could get that telephoto look, like the nice framed cinematic look where it's all compressed. That means you have options for things like lighting. You can get an f1.7 lens if you need something brighter than the one you already have. That also means better low light because you have control over that. This was the biggest sensor up until recently, Micro Four Thirds on the Inspire 2. The camera is an X5S, so those are separate with the Inspires. The camera and the body, you can swap them out. So it was the best low light up until now. I still think it's the best low light because you get a natural film look. It doesn't look like there's like a digital cleaning done to it where it's like noisy and has ISO, but then it's been cleaned in the software. Shooting raw format sounds really cool, but remember, that means recording video in raw format photos. So you can imagine how quickly that becomes a huge problem because you can't record forever. You can only get a couple of minutes on an SSD. This one that sits in the back of it was $1,000. It's DJI CINE SSD is what it's called, 480 gigabytes, and it was about $900. The ProRes that comes out of this is very good. It shoots ProRes 422, 5280 by 2160, so it's like 4K but a little bit wider, like halfway to 6K. The other thing though is that it crops in on the sensor when you do it that way, so it looks kind of like a telephoto camera versus just the wide view. That lens and format combination is really very, very nice. I don't know what it is about that specifically, but I always look at it compared to my other footage and I love it the most. It's very unique. Some of the best footage I've ever seen online is this guy filming in the Alps, and that was done in ProRes 422. That's what I'm using most of the time when I'm filming with this drone. It also has ProRes 44444, which is more data rich and supposed to be more accurate to like an RE camera or something. Color accurate if you are really into color science and color grading. The image on this thing, I have to say, it does look the most cinematic, the most like film, because there's not this like digital sharpening or software adjustment that's done to the footage. You can kind of see on the smaller drones that that's happening. A lot of times it's very helpful, like on the Mavic 3, that's very good firmware software combo. On this one though, it feels way closer to the real world. I know what you're thinking. You're gonna get this drone, put on a 45mm, fly around town and get all this super unique footage that nobody else can get. Hate to burst your bubble. I had that idea too. First of all, you're ignoring how difficult it is to take off with this thing when everybody looks. It's super noisy when it takes off. It's the loudest. It's really dramatic. Everybody will look. It's like a helicopter in the sky. It flies and moves so distinct. You're going to think it's more UFO TikTok evidence. If you're shooting a movie or for a network out in the desert, yeah, film to your heart's content. But if you're like a rogue videographer in town trying to get some footage of the downtown area that's busy, this feels like a bit much. Second, anything beyond a 25mm is really tough to work with. When I'm using the 45mm, you have a super long look, and I thought it'd be really unique and you get all this nice compression. It's also very tough to keep it steady with this camera and that a lens that long or anything longer. But with this one, you will have a better time shooting on the 25 and just using that cropped mode 5280 by 2160. Remember, on a micro four thirds, it's cropped in pretty far. That's really the most I ever need just between those two lenses, a 50mm and this 25mm. As much as I love the image out of this drone, it makes it very hard to start defending the Inspire 2 when you have something that's close enough to it, like a Mavic 3. Because you will film more, you'll get better practice, you'll find better conditions, you'll do 5 takes with the Mavic 3 before you sweat and crap your pants over 1 take with the Inspire 2. If you're already an established camera guy, you have networks and clients, you can be an adult and make the decision. Do you already have tons of work? Do you know that people that you film for would like this? Great, get the Inspire 2 or Inspire 3. Otherwise, if you're thinking it's a ticket to get a ton more work, don't look at it that way, and I promise you would be happy with something smaller. It's also not the best for photos. It shoots 12 megapixel photos. The photos I've taken on this thing are pretty average, honestly. It's not like this is the only way in the door though. I've had networks buy stuff from me that was just straight up MOV H.265. Disney wanted 10-bit Mavic 2 Pro D-Log from me, just straight from the card, so they could do the color grading themselves. If I could emphasize one thing that I wish I knew before going into all this, if you have the footage, they will find you. Get whatever drone you will obsessively maximize and want to use and get the most unique situations and conditions and framing. If you're good enough and you have the footage and it's relevant and you post it online, you will get emails for it. Worry about a way bigger camera once you've already got the ball rolling with that. But really, when a Mavic 3 can get you footage that looks like this and you can get it over and over and you don't have to sweat your balls off trying to get the shot right because the drone is huge and noisy, it makes it hard to stick up for the Inspire 2 these days. The Inspire 3 could be really relevant for somebody who's not watching this video because they already have a boatload of work and they don't need to listen to me. You can make money with all of these drones, and if you've sold stuff online before, you know that people buy for the relevance first and then the quality second. It just has to meet like a bare minimum quality wise, but what you're filming and how relevant it is way more important. Cell phone footage in 1080p that's vertical of an international incident will sell better than the world's most cinematic footage of some trees. I do have a course for this stuff, editing and cinematography, as well as marketing business for running a drone business. Don't get in the course if you're kind of dabbling into this and you don't have a drone. Once you know if you have a knack for this kind of thing and you want to pursue it and get busy with it, then that's when you should sign up. If you haven't sold footage online, I have Pond 5 makes the most sense. They have the best payout and kind of the sweet spot for pricing. If you go with something like Video Hive, you'd have to sell like 6 of these things before you'd only have to sell 1 of the same at Pond 5. And I've done both. Trust me, if people want your footage, they will buy it. They don't care where it's at. If they need it for a project, they'll pay $100 for it versus $10 just because it was cheap. There's no bargain bin video shopping going on. Although Video Hive is doing better now. It used to be like $15 for a clip, and now it's obviously you can set your own price. That means if you have a Mini 2, you don't have to be shy. You can still sell that footage if it's relevant and people want it. And I know that quality isn't the most important thing because I still get sales in 1080p. So, I mean, they're not prioritizing that. But still, to this day, I've already said the most sales I've gotten is from my town reel, and that thing's old. I've updated it, but it's still, years later, it's still doing the best. There's not anything else